You've walked into a crowded room, voices layered upon each other in a symphony of conversation. Most people glide effortlessly between interactions, following the rhythm of social cues. But your attention drifts elsewhere. You pick up something unspoken, an undercurrent beneath the surface. The way someone glances away too quickly, the shift in tone between two people standing close together. You sense something hidden, something no one is saying. It's not a fact, not something tangible, but you know it's real. You've always known things like this, without knowing how. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist and founder of analytical psychology, recognized this quality in a rare group of people he called introverted intuitives. To most, these individuals are an enigma. Even Jung himself, a man devoted to understanding the depths of the psyche, described them as one of the most difficult types to comprehend. And yet, difficult does not mean insignificant. Jung believed that these individuals lived among the most interesting and unusual lives, precisely because they perceive reality differently. An intuitive introvert's mind does not rely on the immediate, the obvious, or the logical. Instead, it moves through hidden layers, drawing meaning from symbols, patterns, and fleeting impressions. While others focus on what is directly in front of them, these individuals see what lies beneath, an unconscious world that most people are oblivious to. For those who recognize themselves in this description, discovering Jung's work is like finding a long-lost map of their own mind. Many describe it as an almost electric realization, a moment when they finally have a language for something they've always felt but never quite understood. In online discussions, people who identify as intuitive introverts often share how they grew up feeling like outsiders, constantly sensing things that others dismissed. Some recall predicting events before they happened, reading people with unsettling accuracy, or being overwhelmed by symbolic dreams and inexplicable hunches. For most of their lives, they kept these experiences to themselves, fearing they would be misunderstood. Jung's work provides an explanation for this strange internal reality. He argued that introverted intuitives are not simply overthinkers or daydreamers, but people whose dominant way of perceiving the world comes through the unconscious, rather than through direct sensory experience. Their minds function much like deep-sea divers, descending into unseen depths where meaning forms long before it rises to the surface. This is why their insights often come as sudden flashes of knowing, as if an answer materialized out of nowhere. It's also why they can struggle to explain how they know what they know, because their minds leap ahead, processing things that others won't recognize until much later. This ability to sense patterns before they fully emerge, to anticipate future possibilities before they manifest, gives intuitive introverts an almost prophetic quality. But it also creates a painful gap between them and the world around them. Many of those who relate to this description speak of loneliness, misunderstanding, and self-doubt. They recall moments when they expressed their insights, only to be met with skepticism or outright dismissal. They learned over time to keep their observations to themselves, to filter their words, to hide how much they see. Jung himself noted this in his studies, describing how introverted intuitives often withdraw into themselves because their perceptions are too difficult for others to grasp. Yet, paradoxically, despite feeling disconnected, these individuals often serve as quiet guides for those around them. They may not always be able to explain why, but their instincts lead them toward deeper truths, toward hidden motives, toward the potential futures that others fail to anticipate. When given the space to express their insights, whether through art, writing, invention, or conversation, they can transform the way people see the world. But what exactly makes someone an intuitive introvert? What separates them from other personality types? To answer that, we need to go deeper into Jung's typology of the mind, a system that reveals why some people are drawn to the external world, while others, like the intuitive introvert, navigate a far more internal and symbolic landscape. Carl Jung spent years studying human psychology before realizing that people perceive and process information in fundamentally different ways. This led to his development of psychological types, a framework that categorizes individuals based on their dominant function, the way they naturally engage with reality. According to Jung, there are two primary attitudes, introversion and extroversion. Introverts, he observed, direct their energy inward, toward the world of thoughts, reflections, and internal experience. Extroverts, by contrast, focus outward, drawing their energy from external activity, people, and sensory engagement. Within these attitudes exist four primary functions: thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition, each of which shapes the way a person understands and interacts with the world. For intuitive introverts, the dominant function is introverted intuition, a mode of perception that does not rely on logic, facts, or immediate sensory information. Instead, it perceives the world through a kind of inner vision, connecting disparate ideas, uncovering unseen patterns, and recognizing symbolic meaning in everyday life. To illustrate how this works, Jung provided a contrast between introverted and extroverted intuition. Extroverted intuitives focus on external possibilities. They see trends before they happen. They take risks. They spot opportunities in the outer world. Many entrepreneurs, explorers, and visionaries operate with extroverted intuition, constantly scanning the outside environment for the next big thing. Introverted intuition, however, works differently. Instead of scanning the outer world, it turns inward, diving into the unconscious, pulling meaning from symbols, dreams, and inner impressions. While an extroverted intuitive might be the first to recognize an emerging market trend, an introverted intuitive senses cultural shifts long before they happen. Where an extroverted intuitive sees new opportunities in business, an introverted intuitive senses hidden motives, long-term trajectories, and deeper truths beneath the surface. Jung described this type as being particularly difficult to understand, precisely because their way of knowing is not immediate or rational. It is predictive, symbolic, and often uncanny. This is why so many intuitive introverts struggle to explain their thoughts in a way that makes sense to others. They don't arrive at conclusions through a step-by-step process. Instead, their minds leap ahead, reaching fully formed insights before they can articulate how they got there. This often leads to frustration, both for the intuitive introvert who feels unheard and for those around them who struggle to follow their non-linear thought process. Jung himself observed that introverted intuitives are often met with skepticism because their insights seem to emerge from nowhere. This can cause them to feel disconnected, reluctant to share their thoughts, or even doubtful of their own instincts. Yet, despite the challenges, Jung believed that this psychological type plays a vital role in society. These individuals, when they learn to trust their inner world, often become visionaries, philosophers, and creators, people whose ability to see beyond the immediate moment allows them to shape new ideas, new perspectives, and even new paradigms of thought. But living with this type of perception isn't always easy. In fact, it can be a burden, one that leads to isolation, misunderstanding, and self-doubt. What happens when you see things no one else sees? When your way of perceiving the world makes you feel more alone than connected? To understand this, we need to explore what it feels like to live as an intuitive introvert, the struggles, the challenges, and the tension between being deeply attuned to reality while feeling utterly disconnected from it. You meet someone for the first time. There's nothing unusual about them, no obvious signs, no strange expressions, but something deep inside you shifts. An image flickers in your mind, an inexplicable sense that this person is hiding something. You can't explain it, but it lingers, settling into your awareness like a whisper just beneath the surface. And then, days or weeks later, something happens. Something that confirms exactly what you sensed all along. For an intuitive introvert, this is a common experience. They don't need proof to know something is true. They don't need a logical explanation to sense that something is about to unfold. They simply know, not in a factual way, but in a way that bypasses conscious reasoning altogether. Jung described this phenomenon as perception that comes through the unconscious, a sixth sense that functions beyond immediate awareness. This kind of insight is not deliberate. It cannot be summoned at will, nor can it be forced into language in a way that others will easily understand. That is what makes it so elusive and so deeply frustrating for those who possess it. An intuitive introvert may walk into a situation, instantly sense something profound, but when asked to explain how they know, they have no words. The knowledge is there, but the path to it is obscured. Jung encountered this firsthand in his clinical work. One of his most famous cases involved a woman who arrived at his office and said something bizarre. "I have a snake in my abdomen." To any ordinary observer, this would have sounded delusional. But Jung knew better than to dismiss what appeared nonsensical. He understood that introverted intuitives often receive messages from their unconscious in images and symbols, not in plain language. As he worked with her, the meaning of the snake began to unfold. It was not a literal creature, but a representation of something within her, a psychological reality surfacing in the only way it could. Over time, as the patient confronted her inner turmoil, she had a dream in which the snake rose upward, transformed, and left her body. In that moment, she felt healed, as though the image had carried her through a process that words alone could not achieve. For intuitive introverts, this is precisely how their minds function. They don't just think about things. They see them in symbolic flashes that feel as real as anything physical. Their unconscious speaks to them constantly through images, dreams, and sudden impressions that arrive without warning. These insights often prove to be startlingly accurate, revealing truths that others fail to see. But this ability comes with its challenges. Many intuitive introverts struggle with the paradox of seeing the unseen while missing the obvious. They can predict the outcome of a situation long before it happens, yet fail to notice the most practical, immediate details in front of them. Jung described this paradox in a humorous but revealing way. The intuitive type, he said, doesn't see the stumbling block before his feet, but he smells a rat for 10 miles. This is why intuitive introverts can appear scattered, absent-minded, or detached from reality. Their minds are not tethered to the present moment in the way most people's are. Instead, they are constantly processing information on a symbolic and unconscious level, connecting invisible dots, drawing meaning from patterns that exist just beyond conscious awareness. This can make them seem brilliant in one moment and oblivious in the next, insightful when it comes to the big picture, but hopeless when it comes to day-to-day logistics. It also makes communication difficult. Since their thoughts are rarely formed in linear, step-by-step reasoning, they struggle to articulate them in a way that others will accept. If they try to express an intuitive hunch, they are often met with skepticism or outright dismissal. "That doesn't make sense," people will say. "Where's the evidence? How do you know?" And so, many intuitive introverts learn to stay silent. They keep their insights to themselves, not because they want to, but because they have learned that most people will not understand. Jung himself noted that introverted intuitives often withdraw from society, feeling like they exist in a world that is detached from their own. They live with a quiet, persistent loneliness, knowing things they cannot fully explain, seeing truths that no one else seems to see. Yet, despite the difficulties, their way of perceiving the world offers something rare. Jung believed that introverted intuitives, when they embrace their nature, can develop a profound connection to the unconscious mind, a connection that allows them to perceive what others overlook, sense meaning where others see randomness, and anticipate future possibilities long before they take shape. But what happens when those insights are rejected? What happens when someone who sees the world differently is constantly told that their way of thinking is strange, impractical, or unfounded? This is where the struggle of the intuitive introvert becomes most apparent. not just in the way they think, but in the way they must navigate a world that does not see what they see. For an intuitive introvert, misunderstanding is not just an occasional frustration, it is a lifelong reality. From childhood, they sense that they are somehow different, though they may not be able to put that difference into words. As they grow older, this difference becomes more pronounced. They experience the world in a way that others do not, and when they attempt to express their thoughts, they are often met with confusion, indifference, or outright rejection. Many describe their childhoods as a time of being misunderstood, of having insights that no one believed. They recall moments where they sensed when a teacher was lying or when they knew a friend was in pain despite their forced smile. But when they voiced these impressions, they were often dismissed. "You're imagining things," they were told. "You read too much into everything." And so they learned to stop speaking. They learned that their insights were not welcome, that their way of seeing the world was not considered valuable. Some withdrew into books, others into writing or art, using these outlets as a way to process their perceptions in a world that did not want to hear them. Jung observed that introverted intuitives often become deeply involved in creative or intellectual pursuits, not because they reject society, but because it is the only place where they feel they can truly express what they see. As adults, this struggle continues. In work environments, they may feel out of place, sensing inefficiencies or future problems that others overlook. In relationships, they may struggle to find people who understand them, who don't mistake their quietness for disinterest or their abstract thinking for impracticality. Many who identify as intuitive introverts describe feeling as though they are always holding back a part of themselves, afraid that if they were fully honest about how they see the world, they would be misunderstood. This chronic sense of being out of sync with others can lead to periods of profound loneliness. Some intuitive introverts describe spending years feeling invisible, believing that their way of thinking has no place in a world that values immediacy, logic, and external validation. Jung believed that this was one of the greatest struggles of this type. Not just feeling different, but feeling unseen. Yet despite the loneliness, there is a certain power in this solitude. Many intuitive introverts find that their deepest insights emerge when they are alone. They do not need constant stimulation to feel engaged with life. They do not need constant validation to feel the weight of their own knowing. Their greatest challenge is not in finding external success, but in learning to trust their inner world, even when others dismiss it. Jung suggested that those who embrace their introverted intuition without shame can eventually transform their isolation into strength. Rather than seeing their difference as a flaw, they can learn to use it as a tool, a way to navigate life on their own terms, rather than conforming to what society expects. The difficulty, of course, is in reaching that point. It is in finding a way to express their insights without fear. It is in discovering a path where their way of thinking is not a burden but a gift. Some intuitive introverts find this through writing, others through art, invention, or research. Some find it simply in knowing that their way of perceiving the world, while different, is no less valuable than any other. But what happens when they finally embrace this part of themselves? What happens when they stop apologizing for how they think and instead begin to fully harness the power of their intuition? This is where the intuitive introvert story shifts, not from struggle but to something greater. A life not defined by isolation but by the extraordinary insights that only they can bring to the world. For much of their lives, intuitive introverts feel as though they are out of step with the world around them. They struggle to explain their insights, often doubting their own perceptions simply because no one else seems to see what they see. They grow used to being misunderstood, to second-guessing themselves, to suppressing the strange yet undeniable feeling that their thoughts move in ways others do not. And yet Jung was certain of one thing: this type, though difficult, though often hidden, lives one of the most interesting lives imaginable. Jung observed that intuitive introverts do not simply process information, they anticipate what is yet to come. They perceive possibilities before they take form, sensing what could be rather than what already is. This is not a gift that operates in loud, dramatic revelations. It is subtle, persistent, and deeply personal, manifesting in small moments of foresight that gradually accumulate into a profound understanding of people, ideas, and even the trajectory of history itself. This ability to see ahead, to predict, to understand hidden connections, has given rise to some of the most brilliant minds in history. Many of them lived in isolation, their insights ahead of their time, their ideas too radical to be immediately accepted, and yet, despite the difficulties, they shaped the world in ways that few others could. One of the most striking examples of this is Nikola Tesla, a man whose mind functioned more like an intuitive dreamscape than a traditional scientific process. Tesla often spoke of receiving sudden, fully formed visions, images that appeared in his mind so vividly that he could mentally construct an entire invention before ever putting pen to paper. He did not test, he did not draft, he simply saw. His intuition was so precise that he could build devices in his imagination, run mental simulations, and refine his ideas without ever needing physical prototypes. And more often than not, when he finally built his inventions in reality, they worked exactly as he had envisioned. Tesla's approach baffled those around him. His method did not fit into the conventional step-by-step logic of scientific progress. He could not always explain why he knew something would work. He just did. This, of course, made him seem eccentric, even unreliable. But history has since proven the accuracy of his intuition. His visionary insights laid the foundation for technologies we now take for granted. Wireless energy transmission, radio waves, alternating current, even the conceptual underpinnings of modern computing. He saw beyond what was possible in his own time, shaping a future that only his mind had access to. This is the potential of the intuitive introvert, the ability to glimpse ideas before they are recognized, to understand patterns before they are mapped, to sense truths before they are proven. It is a way of thinking that does not operate on command, nor does it always produce immediate, tangible results. But when nurtured, when given the space to develop, it becomes a powerful force for innovation, creativity, and discovery. This is why so many intuitive introverts find their greatest strength in fields that allow them to work in solitude, to explore ideas at their own pace, and to bring form to the formless. Writers, artists, philosophers, inventors, scientists, many of them share this way of seeing the world, using their intuition as a quiet but relentless guide. Yet, despite these remarkable abilities, intuitive introverts often struggle to see their own gifts. Because their insights arrive wordlessly, without evidence, without explanation, they are frequently dismissed, not only by others, but by themselves. They downplay their ideas, they hesitate to trust their instincts, they struggle to find a place in a society that values immediacy over depth, concrete facts over abstract knowing. Jung understood this hesitation. He believed that intuitive introverts must learn to trust themselves, even when their insights seem strange, even when others do not understand. He argued that these individuals have access to a level of perception that, if developed properly, can become one of the most profound tools for human progress. But this development does not happen on its own. It requires effort, patience, and, most importantly, a willingness to embrace their nature rather than suppress it. Many intuitive introverts feel trapped between two worlds, one that demands practicality and structure, and another that speaks to them in symbols, visions, and unseen connections. The challenge is in learning how to bridge these two realms, how to translate intuition into something tangible, how to bring what is hidden into the light. And so the question arises, how does an intuitive introvert learn to trust themselves? How do they find a way to move through the world without feeling constantly misunderstood? How do they embrace their gift without being consumed by it? To answer this, we must turn to Jung's ultimate vision for human growth, the process he called individuation, the journey of becoming fully oneself. The journey of an intuitive introvert is not an easy one. From childhood, they feel as though they stand at the edge of things, watching, observing, sensing what others cannot see. They struggle to explain themselves, struggle to find words for what they perceive, struggle to fit into a world that operates on external validation rather than inner knowing. Many go through life believing that they are misfits, outsiders, oddities, that their way of thinking is too abstract, too impractical, too different to be of value. They doubt their own insights, suppress their instincts, and force themselves to follow paths that do not suit them, simply because they believe there is no other choice. But there is a choice, and Jung knew this. He understood that those who embrace their nature rather than resist it unlock something rare and extraordinary. He believed that intuitive introverts, when they develop their insights and learn to balance their inner world with the external one, can make profound contributions to society, not despite their differences, but because of them. This process, the journey of coming into oneself, of integrating the unconscious with the conscious, of bringing forth the hidden gifts that lie beneath the surface, is what Jung called individuation. It is the path to becoming whole, to accepting one's strengths and weaknesses, to honoring one's own way of perceiving the world rather than forcing it into a structure that does not fit. For the intuitive introvert, individuation is not about rejecting society or retreating into solitude forever. It is about learning how to navigate the external world without losing their internal one. It is about understanding that their way of thinking is not a flaw, but a function that, when cultivated, has the power to reshape perspectives, unlock hidden potential, and bring light to things others do not yet see. Many who resonate with this path speak of a shift that happens when they finally recognize and embrace their intuition. They stop apologizing for how they think. They stop dismissing their instincts. They stop trying to explain away what they know deep down is real. Instead, they begin to trust themselves. They begin to explore what their minds are truly capable of. For some, this means diving into art, writing, invention, or philosophy, fields where abstract thought is not just accepted, but required. For others, it means working in psychology, research, or creative problem-solving, where their ability to see patterns and anticipate possibilities becomes an asset. And for some, it means simply moving through life with a quiet but unshakable confidence in their own perceptions, no longer doubting the reality of what they sense. Jung believed that the world needs people who see beyond the immediate, who are willing to listen to the unconscious, who are not afraid to explore the depths of the human mind. He knew that intuitive introverts, if they learned to trust themselves, could offer something rare, valuable, and transformative. And so the final question remains, not for Jung, not for history, but for you. What would happen if you stopped dismissing your insights? What if you allowed yourself to trust what you see, even when others do not? What if, instead of fearing your difference, you embraced it? Because perhaps your way of seeing the world isn't a burden at all. Perhaps it's exactly the kind of vision the world needs.